If I was to start an e-commerce brand with you today, Eric, that sold protein powder, I'll never rank, at least for a year, on page 1 for the term protein powder. It's too competitive. So what I would do is I would use a keyword research tool and I would look at all the questions that are related to protein powder. What is protein powder and when do I use it? What dose should I use it in? How long does it take for protein powder to work? I would answer each of those questions in a 1,500 word blog post. And I would internally link to my homepage that's optimized for protein. That's how you would build up the topical authority that, like, hey, Google, I'm letting you know I'm selling protein powder and I'm a knowledge base for every single question on the internet about the parent topic of protein. You should consider ranking me over time for my parent keyword, which is protein powder.
Hello and welcome to the DTC podcast. I'm Eric Dyck. Today we're growing organically with Kevin Miller, co-founder and CEO of Gr0, a fast-growing SEO company focused on helping DTC brands succeed with SEO. Today we talked about why you shouldn't quit SEO too early and how to create a plan and a goal you can stick with. We talked about how to approach high competition keywords, as well as the incredible opportunities that you can find when you use secondary or tertiary keywords. And you'll consider a really interesting OnlyFans angle that I came up with, as well as Kevin's simple three-pronged approach to generate press backlinks, as well as why we don't need to worry as much about Google's organic algorithm changing the game these days. I hope you enjoy this one. I know SEO is on the mind of a lot of D2C entrepreneurs, so I hope this one can be helpful. On with the show. Hey retailers, ever feel like your shopper experience feels just like everyone else's? Here's an idea. Put your shopper first with the only personalization platform that is purpose-built for retailers. Bluecore combines retail data and predictive intelligence to match online shoppers with the products they will buy next across channels like email, site, paid media, social, and SMS. Automate and scale your personalized content offers and recommendations for each shopper in a one-on-one individualized experience. Visit Bluecore.com to see why brands like Noble, Express, and Bliss have gone shopper first to drive repeat purchases and increase customer lifetime value. Welcome to the D2C podcast, Kevin. Can you start by telling me what most e-commerce brands get wrong about SEO?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me on, Eric. I appreciate you for having me. The question is, what do most e-commerce brands get wrong about SEO? Well, I think that most of them get the wrong idea as to how long it takes for it to work and how long they should be committing to investing in it. So what they get wrong is they invest in it for a month or 2 months or 3 months, and then they abandon the channel and they never come back to it because they think that it didn't work, when in reality it was probably just about to work. I think of the analogy of kind of something similar to an iceberg coming out of the water. They're building up, they're getting closer to the top of the water, and then it peaks through. But that peaking through, that might not happen for 12 months after someone got started from scratch, especially if they're starting with a brand new domain that just launched.
Yeah. And you think a lot of people kind of turn away before it kind of gains enough momentum to kind of peak through.
Yes, and I think that they, most likely, if they knew the right place to look, they would see that they are having some success underneath the water, if you will. But they just need to give it a little more time. So the success underneath the water, just so anyone listening, that's impressions. The first thing you'll see when you publish content or you get written up in the news is you'll see that over time your website is starting to show up for more keywords yesterday than it did the day before yesterday. And that's how you measure if what you're doing is actually going to come to fruition and is going to be valuable at some point. Because after you have a certain threshold of impressions, you will then start to get clicks.
Totally. That's interesting. It's a leading inventory that you're just being shown in the results.
It's a leading indicator, yep. So you might rank number 10 for something, but most people don't click on the 10th result. So you might be getting, tens or hundreds of thousands of impressions, but 0 clicks. And then if you keep going, that listing where you rank number 10 will move up to number 4. You'll start to get clicks on a daily basis.
So if you've got a core, term that you're going after as an e-commerce brand, and say it's a highly competitive term, are you advising people to start building out start building out their plan to attack those words right away so that they can work on it for 12 months or so? Or are you suggesting that they find, keywords that are more along the edges of what they're looking for that have lower competition that they can tackle first?
Great question. The answer is the latter. So I'll give an example that I feel like is pretty tangible for people to understand, and that would be if I was to start an e-commerce brand with you today, Eric, that sold protein powder, and I launched the website today, I'll never rank, at least for a year, on page one for the term protein powder. It's too competitive, and I have no history with Google. So what I would do is I would use a keyword research tool like SEMrush or Ahrefs or KW Finder, and I would look at all the questions that are related to protein powder in order of frequency with which they are searched. So, from my own keyword research doing this, I know that some of the questions are, what is protein powder and when do I use it? What dose should I use it in? How long does it take for protein powder to work? How much protein do I need if I'm a male over 30? How much protein do I need if I'm a female over 30? Right? Things like that. I would answer each of those questions, as long as they are unique and distinct, in a 1,500 word blog post. And I would internally link to my homepage that's optimized for protein. And I would say the title tag of my homepage would be Kevin and Eric's company, protein powder, direct to your door type of thing. So that's how you would build up the topical authority that, like, hey, Google, I am letting you know that I'm selling protein powder and I'm a knowledge base for every single question on the internet about protein, about the parent topic of protein. You should consider ranking me over time for my parent keyword, which is protein powder.
But then beyond, so you've written this one comprehensive piece, but we're talking over a year-long strategy. So what do you do then over that? If you've answered all those main questions about protein powder in your first article, do you have to continue to expound on those core topics, or do you just have to really branch out and create sort of a spider web?
Each of those smaller topics is one article. So we're talking, ideally you would write 100 articles. So what is protein powder and what are its benefits? That's one article. How long does it take for protein powder to work? That's article number 2. And this is very easy to identify in Ahrefs. It'll show individual phrases. Each one of those phrases is a full article. Yeah.
That's interesting. And then, okay, so this is hundreds of articles over that course of time. We're starting with this. Well, in this case, that's a pretty competitive keyword. You're still going to look for those angles in. The one that I find most interesting, I was using SEMrush the other day, and I was looking at one of our competitors who focuses on influencer marketing. And I saw that, like sort of a newsletter media company essentially. And I saw that they were getting over something like 600,000 organic impressions according to SEMrush. And I looked into it, and they had a lot of branded impressions, but then they also had a ton of impressions on the keyword OnlyFans. And I thought that was so interesting because that's one of those keywords that unless you have a brand that can bridge it, you'd probably want to stay away from it. But in their case, they're focused so heavily on influencer marketing. So they're looking at people who want to know about whether, what their options are. Like, I could become an influencer or I could go on OnlyFans kind of thing. And they found a really great keyword that not a lot of people could rank for that actually was hyper effective at bringing a large amount of people onto their page and into their traffic. I wanted to know if you had any good examples of companies who've done things like that.
Well, that's genius. It's also very opportunistic because, like you said, you have to be in a spot where their viewpoint internally could have easily been that they want to avoid that at all costs, and they chose not to. It turned out to be something they could use. The reason they benefit from that is there's 1 million people a month who search for the term OnlyFans because it's just become so popular, and so they can piggyback off of that branded traffic. They probably wrote an article that said like OnlyFans versus the name of that company, which is probably how they were able to rank for it. Other examples of that, I don't have many. I built a website called thewordcounter.com, which is an English grammar blog. And my goal was to rank number 1 for the term word counter because that gets 1.5 million visitors a month. So that's kind of an example. Like I actually employed that strategy myself. But it wasn't based on a competitor name. It was more of like an industry, like a tool that I saw. Yeah. There was opportunity on Google for that tool.
I love it. And it's similar to us actually as well. There's one of the keywords we're looking at is Facebook ads library. And it's a great keyword because it qualifies people as someone, they need to know enough about Facebook ads to know that there's a library, to know that they might be looking at competition. But most people are just looking for the library. So it could be dangerous. But if we were to create a comprehensive guide to getting the most out of the Facebook library, it's very low competition. That's probably one of those sort of like tangent keywords that we could maybe piggyback on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And depending
Very
on how
cool.
old your website is and how authoritative it is, the more that's how you direct which keywords you're going to actually go after. But if it's a brand new website, you got to stick with stuff that's simple and has a keyword difficulty of 0 to 10. That's in that green section in Ahrefs, because otherwise there's going to be too much competition and you'll never rank on page 1 for that term.
Totally. But do you advise, and then so you advise going after these sort of secondary, outside tertiary keywords, and do you eventually build an attack to go towards those main ones that'll really drive the brand?
Yeah, you definitely build an attack to go after those main ones. The main ones need to be in the title tag of your homepage. That's the most important. If there's one thing that indicates to Google what you're selling, it's going to be that. So, for example, Zillow, their title tag is, houses, apartments for sale, apartments for rent, something in that nature. That's what they want to be known for. That's what that's their thing. So that's how I think about it for most of our brands that we work with, is we try to identify a powerful, marquee tagline that gets a lot of searches.
Nice. So, we've talked a lot about content and sort of a content approach for SEO, but beyond sort of content, what do you think are some other like overlooked factors in the SEO formula?
Well, going off of my last point, I think one of the things that gets overlooked is on-page optimization. And what that means is, in layman's terms, every web page on the internet has a title tag and it has a heading 1. And each of those need to be unique and they need to be descriptive of what you're selling on your page. It's most important for product pages and collection pages. So, for example, we work with a client that's called the Reformation. I don't expect you to know them, Eric, but every female in the world does. It's like a very popular women's, dress company. So they sell red dresses, wedding dresses, floral dresses, things like that. And the title tags of that, need to be, floral dresses for like a specific occasion, Easter Sunday, or red dresses for whatever it is. And the title tag needs to be red dresses for women. Just needs to be very clear what those are, what is being sold on that site. Most websites on the internet have duplicates. You don't want these things to be duplicative, and you want oftentimes different developers work at a company, things just get jumbled around. That's the biggest, easiest mistake that some people would make, is that they just don't clearly tell Google what they're selling. So if that gets fixed, you can often rank pretty well.
When we were just starting our SEO journey, I went to a friend and had him look at things, and I was like, pretend I'm a 5-year-old, and don't underestimate how little I know about SEO, and tell me what I need to do for this page. He's like, you should probably update the title tags. Like, yep. So
yeah, and it's very simple, very easy.
Yeah.
One example is we're working with a friend of mine who I think is going to start this month, and he sells a dog leash, and so his title tag said lifetime leash, and that's the brandable name that he chose. It's a great name for the brand. However, if I'm a dog owner and I need a leash for my dog, I'm not going to type in lifetime leash. I'm probably going to type in dog leash and go from there. And so his title tag should have been lifetime leash. Dog leash.
Dog leash, yeah.
Dog leash, comma, like for this type of dog. Dogs under 30 pounds, dogs over 30 pounds, whatever it might be. So it needs to be an exact match of what someone would type into Google if they didn't have any idea what your brand does.
And it has to meet them kind of where they are on their journey, exactly what they're looking for. That makes sense. Your preference, you're like, oh, I'm a brand, I'll put my brand first there. But that, again, most people aren't brand aware of startup brands.
Exactly. They're not brand aware of startup brands. My own title tag for Gr0.com should be direct to consumer e-commerce SEO. That's squarely what we do. 92% of our clients are that. I haven't done that because I have a hope that we will also be able to service enterprise and like technology startups as well, which we is the other 8%. But if I wanted my title tag to be perfectly right now it just says digital marketing and SEO services, but a perfect optimization would be D2C e-commerce SEO because that's what we do. That's our bread and butter. That's what I want to rank for, you know?
I think it would be smart, especially considering probably how many D2C and e-commerce brands are currently casting their thoughts to SEO, right? Like with so much happening with iOS 14 and rising costs of everything. This ability to create a steady stream of organic traffic is so attractive. Are you seeing it kind of blow up in the space right now with interest?
We're seeing that a lot of people are willing to give us more budget to experiment versus having it all go to Facebook and Google and TikTok.
It's funny. I'm working with my partner right now who's this longtime performance marketer, and it's a hard sell where you're so used to putting money in, pushing a button, and having sales come out the other side, convincing people that you're going to invest in this 12-week iceberg or 12-month potentially iceberg, sort of situation. It can be a tough sell for people, but I think people are starting to get it.
Yeah, and it can be a tough sell, and I totally understand that. I hope that we have enough case studies and ability to prove that this strategy really is the right one. And I hope other SEO companies who we compete with do the same, because it's been around since the invention of Google, and it really does work, and it could be an amazing channel for people. It just needs to be done right. So the way we think about it being done right is just very basic, which is it really is just three things: writing articles that answer questions to what people are asking about your product or your service and answering them, so that you can be the answer to that question. That would be number one. Number two would be getting featured in the news, whether you hire a PR firm or you use, help a reporter out, which is something we use at our company, or by any means necessary. Just getting in the news and getting a backlink to your website, that's critical. And then the third is on-page optimization, which we previously discussed. And that's it. That's an SEO strategy that works for e-commerce really, really well. It's just those three things and making sure you do those things well. We try not to overcomplicate it.
I love it. And I think you were specific there, in the old world of SEO, this idea of backlinks and, used to be able to buy backlinks and, find other webmasters and this and that. You kind of short-circuited that and don't screw around with that. Go right to the press who has all this kind of credibility, right?
Yeah, you can't buy backlinks anymore. It's against Google's webmaster guidelines. There's tons of people who do, trust me, but Google knows. They're able to identify. Anyone who thinks that they're smarter than Google, I would probably disagree. Because they probably wouldn't be working anymore, myself included. So I try to encourage people to do press releases, because press releases, even though they're no follow backlinks, they still get noticed by Google. And in my mind, legitimate companies who have things to announce that are newsworthy, they do press releases, and there's no reason D2C companies shouldn't as well. And then, we just hired a PR firm for the first time, so even we do it. We want to get written up in publications we can't get on our own. We know that backlinks are important. We're going to do the same thing at our company, where we're starting to publish SEO topics. People want to know, how long will it take for my content to rank? How do I do this? How do I do that? Similar questions to what you're asking now. We're going to start answering them too. But for the past 2 years, we've just been getting hits in the press as many places as we can to build up that strength, that domain authority, that trust with Google.
I love it. You're going to eat your own dog food, which is something as all marketers we have to do.
Yeah. And we already have with that other website. We put at least $200,000 into this Gr0 website that we own.
Yeah.
And it's got over 1 million unique visitors a month with our exact strategy that we sell to clients.
We all know how tough the past 12 months have been, with supply chain and marketing costs rapidly rising. Ecom World is your secret weapon to help your brand get back on track and make this year your best year ever. Ecom World is hosting an online event that will arm you with the strategies you need to grow your D2C brand profitably. Meet experts like Kellen Fitzgerald, head of ecom at Gr0, and Davey Fogarty, CEO of The Oodie, as well as 80 other ecom experts who are paving the way in D2C. Get their step-by-step strategies to optimize the growth of your ecom brand right now. D2C listeners receive 30% off the ticket price, so head over to ecomworldconference.com/DTC to get your ticket now. That's ecomworldconference.com/DTC. That's awesome. I wanted to ask a bit about info architecture, because what we're talking about is sort of, organizing things that answer questions for people, and it also sort of satisfies the the algorithm side of things. But does it matter a ton where this information is on your site? Can each of these just be blog posts on your site, or does it require more thought to where this content lives?
Well, everything that we've been discussing today should all be in individual blog posts on your website. So, this podcast is done by Riverside. So the URL structure should be riverside.com/fm/blog. And then the actual blog post would be riverside.fm/blog/ what is protein powder? You know what I mean? That's how it should be nested and set up from an organizational perspective. But yeah, some people answer some questions on PDPs and collection pages and on the homepage. That's all great. But the rule of thumb is really that there's usually one marquee keyword or set of keywords that can rank per web page. So if you have a bunch of copy on your homepage and you have a protein powder D2C startup, all that supporting content is all just helping it rank for the term protein powder and all the other, very closely related terms to protein powder. So I just try to think about one net new keyword per page.
I love that. Do you have any advice for ways that SEO can help podcasts grow? Asking for a friend.
Of course, yeah. That's a tough one. I don't know if I do have anything that I have off the top of my head. Meaning,
the one thing that was advised to me that I think is really good, I'll just mention here, was when it links to what you said, which is like I could start going to these podcast guests that I get who are building amazing businesses in these cities throughout the US, Canada, wherever. And I could go to like the local newspaper or media around where that person lives and say, hey, I'm doing a highlight on a great local entrepreneur. And that would be a way that I could get, a lot of links to the content from these reliable sources.
That's a great idea. Yep.
I got to do it.
You could do a press release for big people who come on, and you could have it linked to your. Do you also have a link on Apple Podcasts? Or is it you do? Okay. So that's like you also have a title tag that you can choose for your Apple Podcast page and the other pages where you have your podcast hosted. So I would make sure that says, D2C podcast. That's like what I would make sure that's like the main focus of it. And then you could announce, that you are doing a podcast with so-and-so. Here it is, here it's live. So that would be one example too. But I will also take that as a homework assignment and see what I can give you after the call too, because I'm also curious to learn more about how I'd attack that problem. But that's what I have off the top of my head.
Love it. So at scale? So I was actually talking to another SEO guy the other day, and he was saying that one of their top clients, a lawyer firm, was spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000 a month on content, on content to kind of really play in these hyper competitive spaces. Okay. What are you seeing in terms of ROI for the clients that you're working with in the SEO space at scale, like over time, once the iceberg is fully unearthed?
Great question. Okay, so here's how we measure it. So the first thing we need to know is how much revenue someone gets from a transaction for whatever they're selling. So in that law example, I'd want to know how much revenue or profit they're making per case. And in Google Analytics, you can track how much organic revenue is coming in the day you begin the SEO campaign or the SEO work. And then let's say it's $10,000. That's the way I measure ROI is just look at how much revenue is coming through the organic channel 12 months later or 6 months later, whatever timeline you and I would like to set. And then what happens is, because that traffic is organic, it's going to come back every month in perpetuity. So will that revenue. So then you're not only making $100,000 in 1 month, it's $100K ideally in perpetuity every single month after that. So that's how I think about the return on investment. And with our brands, we try to make sure that if someone's paying us $10,000 a month, we can give them 3 times their return on ad spend by the 6-month mark. That's like a very conservative thing we know we can hit more often than not.
Awesome. I remember so I've been in the industry a long time, and I actually started on what was called Google AdWords at the time, before
Yep.
2010, let's just say.
Oh
And
wow.
and I remember that so many times people would be talking, like, or even on our campaigns on the paid side, an algorithm change would come through, and we'd get kind of wiped out. And I
Yep.
remember, I forget how they were timed, but there used to be these big sweeping algorithm changes on the content side, and then
Yep.
sometimes people would find themselves on the wrong side of it, and they lose all their traffic.
Yes.
Does that still happen, or has the algorithm evolved to the point where it's not going to be that abrupt for people?
I think it has evolved to where it's not going to be that abrupt for people. It does still happen, but it's not nearly as dramatic. I also think that less people are cheating. I think that, after that happens and your whole business gets wiped out, most people don't dare to do it again. And by do it, I mean buy backlinks that they know are not, acceptable in the eyes of Google. So I think those bad actors just said, "Hey, you know what? I'm done. I'm putting my hands up. I'm going to go do something else." So I think it's a combination of things. But no, I haven't seen a nuclear, rollout since, probably 2012, 2013, 2014.
I like it. Well, here's to keeping the nuclear rollouts under wraps.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. Anytime you're talking about tricking the algorithm or hacking this or doing that, like, as you know, Google is what, like a 30-year-old company now. Their AI has been just getting smarter and smarter year over year. So that ability to trick it is not there, and you just have to support the user, create a great user experience, great content for them, and really, I like how you've simplified it down to really focusing on PR for e-commerce brands. To get that backlinking, and so what are people looking for? Like, you obviously want as many PR hits as possible, but I know with backlinks, you're trying to rapidly accumulate links. Are you suggesting doing PR press releases every week? Like, what does the cadence for linking look like at scale?
Good question. I suggest for any D2C brand, I suggest doing one press release per month. I also suggest using this service. We people pay us to do it for them, but it's called helpareporter.com, and that's where you can see every journalist query that comes out from major networks on a daily basis. They send 3 emails a day. It's a free service, and you can skim the email and you can see which of these queries most relates to your business. So journalists will say, "Hey, I'm writing on these 300 stories in a given day," believe it or not. And you'll be able to say, "Yep, I'm an expert. I can answer that question better than anyone else." And then the name of the game is to respond to them as fast as you can with your answer, a bio, a headshot, and get that answer out to the journalist and hope that it's of high quality enough that you're going to get selected. If you get selected, they will feature you in your article, and as a thanks, they'll give you a do follow backlink to your company's homepage.
That's
So
fantastic.
doing that as much as possible is the key. Like, if I was to start a D2C brand today, I would have someone on my team responding to 10 journalist queries per business day, 50 a week, 200 a month, and that would be a really I've seen that. We offer a do it for you service like that, where we give brands a copywriter and they respond on behalf of CEOs and founders and heads of marketing. And those are the two things that I would do, is the press releases and the reporter outreach. If you have the money, I would also hire a PR firm. That's what we do. So, we do those three things at Grow. We do press releases, we do the Haro stuff, and we hire a PR firm. So I can only give you the advice of things we do.
Love it. Cool. Any other final words for our D2C listeners who are thinking about investing more and more about SEO given the state of the world?
I would say make sure that if you do invest in SEO, you come at it from a place where you feel like you can really do a good job with the writing. So find a writer that you have on your team that you feel really understands how to speak to your audience, and make sure that they write thorough articles. The articles really need to be 12 to 1500 words in length to adequately explain a topic in a way that's robust enough and thorough enough to earn the top spot on Google. So I would just implore D2C brand owners to not like half-ass it, if you will. Go into it with all the resources, with the right expectations of how much time you think it'll take to work, and really give it a shot before quitting. Like, don't bail too early. That's kind of what I would say. If you're hiring an agency, be the D2C owner that's really on top of it. Make sure you get the most out of your agency and you get the most for your spend.
I think your first point too, just about the quality of the content. This is something that we're kind of running into right now. So we've got these writers that we work with on these unique pieces that go in all of our newsletters, and then we have this. Then on the SEO side of it, we're kind of creating briefs around the topics that we want to go after. And I'm looking at the articles that are in our competitor space that have kind of already written about the topics we want to write on, and they're great pieces where they have lots of it. And the thing is, we can't come to the table with content that's worse. We would have to be able to put our own unique spin on it, make it still have all the on-page SEO that we need, but make the content really worthwhile for people as well, and not to just view it as like we'll just put a bunch of keywords on a page, or we'll get the bare minimum done with the content. Like, people come to us for our content, so we know that even though it's got an SEO focus, we've got to put the work in and make sure it's in our brand voice and sounds great and adds value to the user.
Yep. Completely agree with that.
Sweet. Nice. So if people want to know more about you and Grow, they can go to gr0.com. Is that what it is?
Yep, correct. They could also go to my personal website, which is kevinmiller.com.
Nice. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on the D2C podcast today, Kim. We'll have to stay in touch. Make sure you reach back out when you got a few more ideas on how I can help take this podcast to the moon.
I will. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at direct-to-consumer, all one word, .co. I'm Eric Dyck, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.